That chime can mean only one thing. It is Friday, February 5th, and we have a new episode on deck for you today. We're talking chiropractic care, my first massage during the pandemic. Our special guest today is Greg Rokisky from the Michigan Association of School Boards, and he's here to talk about painting the magic wall behind his desk, the power of online community over the past year, reading, pandemic, puppies, and so much more on today's episode. Let's get started.
Welcome to your Healthy by Association Weekly Wellness Check with Aaron Wolowick, Angela Pelk, and Jim Thompson.
All right, welcome to Healthy by Association, everyone. My name is Aaron Wolowick, and I'm joined this week by our special guest, Greg Rokisky. Welcome to the show, friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here remotely.
Absolutely. We're going to jump into who you are and what brings you to us in just a couple of moments. People are probably wondering, where's Angela? Where's Jim? We were promised and we did not receive. And I just want to say that, as always, things come up. Jim is out handling some personal matters with his family this week. And so feel free to send him your well wishes in the thread, in the chat on Facebook. Angela is getting some much needed self-care with her mom today. So we wish her the best as well. And I'll be talking about my own self-care here in a moment. But you're here with me. So I'm happy to be here today and happy to be joined by my special guest, Greg. So Greg, we're going to start just by asking you kind of who you are and what you do during your day job.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am currently the Assistant Director of Marketing for the Michigan Association of School Boards. So here in Michigan, school board members are elected, and our job is to help them be most effective in that role. So I work with a communications, PR, and marketing department to provide resources, information, and anything else they need at the time they need it most as school board members. In addition to that, I do sit on MASB's Workplace Culture Committee. I oversee our sponsor and VIP program. So needless to say, I stay busy.
Absolutely. In the association world, we all wear multiple hats, right? And so it's no surprise that you do the same. We'll get to your sort of health and wellness connection here in a moment, but I'm just curious, what sort of projects are getting you most jazzed at work right now?
I think as we approach almost a year into the pandemic, it's hard to find those motivations sometimes, especially in the day-to-day cyclical work that are often found in associations. So it's really been the strategy moment. So looking ahead, kind of planning for the second half of this year and beyond, and getting excited for what's to come whenever we return to what this new normal looks like.
Well, and really hoping, right, that the second half of this year affords us the opportunity to sort of get out into the community with members to do the things that we love to do with them in person. Certainly the virtual environment has afforded us a number of opportunities that maybe we wouldn't have been able to explore previously, but really to get back to our roots and sort of marry some of that virtual work with the in-person work that we know and love so much.
Absolutely. And I think it's finding that hybrid model and that silver linings from what we've been able to do as associations in the past year. And until we get there, it's day by day and kind of planning where we can.
Well, and I think over the course of the past year, your kind of interest and maybe your connection with health, wellness, and the Healthy by Association community has grown. I'm curious for you to just maybe lay the context or the foundation for what brought you to this space.
Absolutely. I think I remember when this was just a Facebook group started, and there are opportunities at conferences and talking about wellness and programming for members and associations. And I think especially in the past year, as associations, we offer niche programming and services for our members, but we've really learned into empathy over the past year and seeing our members as a whole person even more than the past few years. And so I think wellness has become even more critical and crucial for associations to lean into talking to their members as whole people. School board members are much more than just school board members. They're parents, community members, friends, colleagues, and it's time that we have to prioritize talking to them as such.
I love that. I think I've shared in a previous episode, and I'll underscore it here. I've been hearing the sort of phrase work life blend much more than work life balance, that it's difficult maybe to achieve balance because, much like a teeter totter, you sort of only have that moment where there's maybe levelness and perfection and sort of two things being equal. But that if we explore this blend, we realize and recognize that our members, our attendees, have assets to them that maybe we typically would have been caring for, identifying, exploring pre-pandemic. And so I love that call out, and I appreciate sort of how associations maybe should be thinking about that with their members moving forward. So, it's funny. I love our weekly episodes when I have two other guest hosts to play off of. But to be honest, I have a drill down list of things I want to ask you about, and so I'm so excited today that we get to do this somewhat one on one. So we can't start a conversation with you because I've been on calls with you obviously over the past couple of months without talking about the wall behind you. Is it real? Is it not real? How did that come to be?
Absolutely. I think I get that question the most often on new calls with folks. And the too long didn't read is yes, it is real, and it is real paint, not wallpaper. And so Kamara, who I live with, we definitely go all out when we move from place to place, and I feel like we level up. However, if you believe it or not, this is actually a subdued wall compared to where we lived last. So we always pride ourselves into kind of making our home a home instead of just a landing pad. And I think after being here 3 years, we finally have every nook and cranny kind of organized, which is nice. And so this wall, I'm coming at you live from our kitchen table right now. And so I joke with folks that a silver lining of the pandemic is that the effort gone into this wall has gotten lots of face time as a result of all of the virtual meetings.
That's awesome. It's so important. We've talked about it before. Making the spaces that we have to live and work in really work for us and make them comfortable and exciting and interesting for us. We sometimes do that in our offices, and maybe not to the same extent. And in particular, when this blend between work and home has been so prominent for us over the last year, I just think it's so, it's a great tip. It's a really good reminder to put time and attention into our space so that it's something we're inspired by and makes us happy and isn't sort of the slug or the drag of everyday work. I think that's great. I want to transition now into sort of this idea or topic around the power of online community over the past year. I know that as we've not had as much opportunity to connect with people in person, certainly the online space has become important. And I would love to hear maybe from your perspective what that's meant for you.
Absolutely. I think community has become so important over the last year. We were forced into kind of a lot of situations that were new for families and friends and communities. And I think the silver lining that I've come away with as someone in the marketing and social media space, there have been a myriad of new communities in which I've been able to tap into. There's one on Twitter specifically. It's centered around a hashtag called hashtag marketing Twitter, but it's become much more than that. And it's encouraged me to not only post on social media, but respond to people. And I've had so many virtual coffees and teas result of those meetings, and just being a little bit more vulnerable and be willing to talk to strangers that are from different time zones. I had a recent chat with someone in Spain a couple of weeks ago, and we really didn't talk about marketing. We just talked about being human in this global pandemic and how that kind of brings us together. So that's one way that just online community over the past year has become so important for me. I am definitely extroverted, can get my energy drained in a lot of extroverted activities, but I definitely have missed connecting with new people over the last year.
I love that. And I think it's one of the reasons why the Healthy by Association community online is also helpful for folks, because in addition to sort of that connection and that push or that support that you have seen, I think it's also important for people that are kind of pursuing health and wellness initiatives, goals, have people to help not only hold them accountable, but also cheerlead them on along the way as well. I think, I've been posting a lot recently about these sort of small milestones that we should be, take pride and ownership and joy in some of these like small achievements along the way, just as much as we do the big ones. And I think we can turn to our community certainly to help us do that. All right, so much to talk about. On the list also is reading. I know that you've undertaken sort of this goal of voraciously reading, taking in information. I would love to hear more about that, and in particular, if anything has stood out to you as must do reading in your own course of exploration, I guess.
Absolutely. So I have always been a voracious reader, but with busy schedules and even dealing with the work-life blend before the pandemic, I had fallen behind on the amount of reading I'd like to do. So one thing I could control last year is how much time I spent reading in lieu of traveling. And so I was able to tackle my goal of 40 books. And so that was just a nice escape, whether it was fiction, nonfiction, or otherwise. And so I've committed this year, I pick a word every year to kind of help guide me and manifest things. And along with that, I have associated a reading goal. And so I've upped it by just a few this year, but I'm going to try and hit my 45 goal. And I've explored a lot of virtual book clubs and talk about community. I think just stumbling into those where I can connect and read along with and discuss books with people in Oklahoma or other states or sometimes even countries has been great. One I am making my way through right now is centered around feedback, and I'm about halfway through. And I think so many people, whether you're a manager, whether you're just in the space of dealing with feedback, receiving or giving, it's called Let's Talk by Therese Houston. And it's just so relevant to the importance of praising and appreciating others. I think it's interesting sometimes that wanting or needing praise is coveted as something taboo. And instead, this book, we should ask for that and do more appreciating and praising of others, especially during this pandemic.
I love that. Reading 40 books seems like an insurmountable task hurdle for probably a lot of people. But, for me, I find that I love to read. I do enjoy reading. Sometimes my hurdle, my barrier is finding really good sort of quality books to read. And I recently stumbled upon, I'm not sure if you've seen this, Greg. It's called Book of the Month. And it's a great group on Facebook. They also send sort of emails as well, and they do a lot of the legwork for you, where they are sort of researching kind of what's hot right now, what people are following, what people are reading, what's getting the most downloads, what's on the top of lists, maybe what are things that you wouldn't have found or explored on your own, and kind of share with you a short synopsis of each. I think it's 5 books a month, and you can sort of pick and choose what you're interested in and what you're not. But I thought that was awesome. I actually, in exploring the service, kind of looked at some of their past books that they've suggested, and definitely ones that it took me a lot of time and energy to research on my own were on that list. And I was like, I may have found like my connection, my source for new material. And so I think I love both kind of where we can find books that maybe are easier than research, all the research we have to do on our own, but also to your point, kind of having people maybe that you know or maybe that you don't know, where you can actually talk through those books. I think is a great opportunity to expand our opportunity during this time when so many of us are not stuck at home, but spending a lot more time at home for sure. All right,
Absolutely. And
so
Book of the Month is
yeah, go
great.
ahead.
I actually happen to be a subscriber. And so I've given gifts of Book of the Month because I think you're right. The decision of adding books and choosing books is overwhelming, and they help whittle it down. And like even in February's, Kristen Hanna, who has written The Nightingale, I believe, and The Great Alone, her brand new book is on there. So she's this reputable best-selling author, and it helps whittle it down, like you said, to those 5 choices.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so this wouldn't be a conversation if we weren't talking about Pandemic Puppy. It's funny, on my own team, on my event card team, we have at least 3 team members who had one or more new puppies since the pandemic began. I know that you jumped on that bandwagon. Tell us more about that.
Absolutely. I joke with folks that I have made it nearly through every pandemic phase that there is. We've gone through DIY, we've gone through making our house a home, eating healthy, all of those things, which I think are good. And one of those absolutely has been the pandemic puppy. I will say that getting a puppy is a lot of work and it has definitely kept me busy. So we adopted a newborn corgi, a blue merle, so very unique coloring, and we've named her Fiona. So we had her just 6 months now, or just shy of that, and she's been great, honestly. And a lot of work, let me reiterate that, but she also forces us, because of her routine and habit, to walk her multiple times a day. So it gets me up and out of my seat rather than just sitting in my same spot all day where I could easily do that. So it has definitely had its moments of challenges, but also joy for sure.
I also think that, in this sort of work life blend, so many opportunities to, either in internal staff meetings or where appropriate with external clients and members as well. There's this sort of like joy and interest from so many people to see like what's going on at home and to see the new puppy. And it's so funny because when I started consulting 10 years ago, it was so taboo to be on a Zoom call and like to have any distraction. Like everyone has to be silent, no noise in the background, like no pets, no whatever. And I just feel like, that sort of blend has creeped in certainly into how we engage with our pets and how we bring them into our lives and share them with others as well. And certainly they bring you a lot of joy, but also bring others joy too.
Absolutely. I think it's normalizing that we are also at home in what we consider our office. And so I've loved seeing those walls come down and having a baby crash a Zoom meeting or a fur baby, whatever that looks like. I think it just makes it a little bit more understandable. And as I facilitate more sessions for our members and whatnot, I kind of preface that I have a 6-month-old puppy, and you might hear her make a cameo in this meeting. And so as we build in those intentional moments as we interact with members and others, it just helps make it okay.
Yeah, I love that. Well, talking about making it okay, I know one of the things we were hoping to touch on today was prioritizing and talking about wellness with an inclusion lens. It's interesting as we reflect on the past year, just who is and isn't able to work from home, who is and isn't deemed an essential worker, who does and does not have access to Wi-Fi and computers and technology. And there it does sort of create a greater chasm within the racial, already significant racial divide. And I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that and maybe what you've seen within the context of your own organization.
Absolutely. I think that's such an important lens too. And globally, we see, and there's so much data out there, and there's growing data every day, that there's so many facets when it comes to wellness and barriers. There's, yes, of course, the racial bias and racial equity and microaggressions and creating safe places and gyms and virtual rooms and all of those things. But then there's also the financial burden that folks face. Um, I think there's such a disruption, which I love to see in the wellness space, of how do we take care of ourselves without having to spend so much money? And then also as we return to the new normal, as we focus on inclusion and accessibility, gyms and health clubs having gender neutral bathrooms and language, and making sure if there are any instances of microaggressions or injustice, that those spaces, even virtual, have a route and process to report them. And I think as we continue to disrupt and move forward in the wellness space, that inclusion will be and need to be at the top of mind. At MASB, we've definitely prioritized just easy ways. We launched a weekly MASB Healthy e-newsletter as a result of the pandemic, and it's doing exactly what I said earlier. We highlight each of our staff members throughout. They do an original video. We talk about how to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. We talk to them as family members, as community members, as parents. We offer resources. Here's just a few stretches that you can do without money. Here are some healthy recipes with things that you might already have around the home. And so we want to definitely reflect that language as we talk and move forward on this broader wellness conversation as a country and globally.
I love that. I think those are great tips and tricks, and just easily implementable within any of our organizations. Our team has a Slack channel completely dedicated to health and wellness, and we just have some reminders every week, like what are you doing this week for yourself, or what are you doing for this upcoming weekend for yourself? Where are you struggling? Where do you need support? Sharing recipes and stuff. So I think it's easy to do, and maybe an easy way for organizations to jump into the health and wellness effort with their staff as well as with their members. I'm going to ask kind of a hard question, Greg, probably the hardest of our half an hour together today. It's not a surprise that we're two white men talking about sort of race and health and wellness. But I'm curious, I wrote down on my pad of paper over here, I think when, white people in particular talk about self care, everyone else sort of sees that as like a must do. Like it's important to take care of yourself, of course. But I think when, generally when Black and brown people talk about self care, they're often seen as lazy. And I'm just kind of curious, what are ways that we can not only begin to dispel that myth or that unbalanced sort of biased approach to self-care ourselves, but what are ways we can as white people sort of take a lead, take a stand in kind of helping to dispel that myth for others as well?
I think that's such an important and critical question. And so I appreciate you asking it. And I think one of the ways is as we look at these wellness initiatives and as we look at the narratives that we continue to amplify and tell, we need to have those voices and communities in the room and tell those stories of what the wellness journey means for LGBTQ plus individuals, Black and brown and other people of color. And I think having them tell what wellness and taking care of themselves means to them and pushing that into the mainstream canon narrative is so important. And making sure if there are wellness initiatives or if it's a wellness organization or brand, I think Peloton has such a nice inclusion and diversity and equity marketing strategy that seems authentic. And if you look at brands that are doing that, it's really putting those communities and members of it having a seat at the table, listening to those uncomfortable conversations. Like you said, two white guys up here, I say I try to be pale, or I am pale and male, but I try not to be stale. And so I think what we need to do is open up and speak up around those injustices when we see them, because silence is not an option anymore. And putting those stories in the mainstream and canon narrative. And there's so much work to
Yeah,
do beyond that as well.
of course. And you call it Peloton, and there are others as well. I would love for people who are watching this either now or later kind of share some of the organizations that are really getting it right in our show notes, because it would be lovely to sort of lift those organizations up, because I think some of them are doing it really well. And I think, like I said, you've called out one, and I know that there are others as well that people are following. Kind of thinking about self-care as we wind down for today, I mentioned to you as we were getting prepared that I am going to my first pandemic massage later today. I've been going to a chiropractor very regularly. I finally found somebody during the pandemic that really understood me and my needs. I have very sort of unique neck issues. And we're on track there, and it's going well. And I've seen a substantial decrease in the number of headaches that I have, but the muscles and stuff are still tight. And so there's still more work to be done. And so while some of it is self-care, certainly the other part of it is a real like health and wellness issue for me, trying to, combat all of these hours of sitting at a computer on Zoom calls all day and all night, I feel like. So I guess that's my mission this week in terms of how I'm going to achieve some self-care. I'm curious, Greg, in terms of what you've been doing recently over the past couple of months to really take care of yourself.
Absolutely. That is such a great question. And I think it's one that is simple enough to automate for us, put a reminder on our calendars to check in with how we're going to take care of ourselves each week, because it is easy to fall to the back burner. But something, just knowing with the online communities, I have set up a Calendly account, which is free, and blocked off evenings and some early mornings to set up calls with friends who I may not have had as much interaction with over the past year, or to connect with those new friends that I mentioned, and just pick their brains on things that are not work, or to empathize around how we're feeling about the pandemic. So that's certainly one. And then knowing when to walk away from the computer. And I have really, really tried on weekends to not touch my work laptop. I have an iPad and a phone. And even if I'm not fully unplugged from electronics, I try not to sit in this exact spot on the weekends. And I know that's not something everyone can do, but I think asking yourself how to check in, how to take care of yourself, even for the next week at a time, makes a huge difference.
Awesome. Greg, you have been such a wealth of information, knowledge, insights, and perspective today. I so appreciate you taking time to join us. For folks that want to get in touch with you, learn more about some of the initiatives you're working on at MASB, or just kind of pick your brain about their own health and wellness approach, either individually or within their organizations, what's a good way for people to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. That is such a good question as well. Well, I am very active on Twitter, so you can find me at Greg Rokisky. Otherwise, my email, you can email me at gregrokisky@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks, Greg, for joining us this week. So appreciate it. And certainly people can leave comments, questions in the show notes for today's episode as well. Want to just kind of tease a couple of things as we close down for today. First, for those that aren't familiar with HBA's Challenge Coin program, we did award our monthly Challenge Coin this month to Sarah Sane for her great storytelling and work around rest and prioritizing rest. And so if you haven't checked that out yet, we do encourage you to take a look at the blog post that she wrote and shared for us. We'll also be joined next week by my colleague, Kara Nacarado, to talk more about her story and kind of her approach to health and wellness. I know she has definitely a lot going on in that space right now, and a lot of successes, but also a lot of challenges that she wants to kind of lift up and share with you all. So we hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, this has been Healthy by Association. And until next time, please remember to power your life with health, wellness, and intention. We'll see you next week, everyone.